Good day. Joe Williamson here. I'm providing some supplemental training for people who use respirators in order to do their work safely. And I'm doing this in collaboration with Dr. Dreves with her Pesticide Safety Education Program under UVI Cooperative Extension Service. I happen to work for UVI Cell in the Safety in Paradise program. The Safety in Paradise program provides free services for small private businesses in the United States Virgin Islands. And we are committed to promoting safety for workers and safety within your workplace. And we offer these services free of charge at your businesses, and feel free to contact us and we can set up a visit for you. One of the things that we're promoting at Safety in Paradise is the OSHA-based campaign, which they do every year in August. It's the Safe and Sound Campaign. And this happens to be the top of that web page for this campaign here. You can see the website address here in the bottom left hand corner. With this campaign, they're trying to promote safety with businesses. This is something that can be offered perhaps right before the start of a shift, maybe at the end of the shift, for your regular daily or weekly safety briefings. Just trying to get that become more routine, getting safety to be more of a priority within your business. And if you can participate in this with your work group, then you can get a small certificate in this virtual coin that shows your participation as well. And then showing the bottom of that web page, this shows the registration to date. And when I say to date, this is August 5th, this is when I take this video. So it'll go up slightly by the time that you're viewing this. But anyways, you can see the participation within this Safe and Sound campaign throughout the United States. And I just want to point out in the Virgin Islands it is 0 at this point, as well as a couple of other territories. But the Virgin Islands is unique, and that is the only state or territory that has never participated in the Safe and Sound campaign. So if I may ask you to participate in this, just by viewing this video as a group, that is participating in the Safe and Sound campaign. And you can register for it from the green link on the middle of this page here. You can see the website to get started in it, to enroll in it, to there in the bottom left hand corner as well. Appreciate it. We can get some representation in our territory. So now to get on with the presentation, all of the plugs out of the way. So the audience this is intended for is people that are already using respirators to work safely. And so I know you know what respirators are, you know what respirators do. However, I just want to point out the fact here that respirators reduce exposure from hazardous level towards more acceptable levels. And it's actually what it's doing, and it's filtering things within your outer working environment into this small microclimate that's right in that breathing zone area, as you see in the photo there, right around your mouth and nose when you don this respirator. Now, they're not eliminating exposure, they're simply reducing it, because they cannot filter out 100% of everything that's out there in the atmosphere, but they can do a very good job at filtering most of it and making it a much safer environment for you to work in. And I also want to show you the hierarchy of controls, and this is a structure that we use, safety professionals used to try to reduce hazards in the workplace. And actually the use of PPE or personal protective equipment is the last resort. It's not the first resort. And what we want to focus on more is these 4 controls up above PPE there, starting with elimination. If you can eliminate a process or a particular material that's creating hazardous contaminants, that is the best control you can use, the most effective. Now, that's not always possible. I understand that. The best way to eliminate a process is to stop what you're doing and eliminate your job. Now, if you can eliminate a process, reasonably, it's a very good way of removing the hazard and making a safer environment to work in. And then the next most effective control below elimination is substitution. And this is replacing the hazard. And a great example of this is if you switch from, let's say, using of one pesticide, let's say an organophosphate, which is a neurotoxin, very toxic to insects, but also very toxic to humans as well, because it attacks the nervous system of all animals, including humans. Now, if you were to place that with a more organic material, whether it be something less toxic like a pyrethroid or something registered as organic, let's say like Volk oil, that's substituting one material for another that is less toxic. You're replacing that hazard with something that's less toxic, and that's a great way to produce a safer work environment. And then below that, we've got engineering controls, and this is isolating you from the hazard. A good example of this is with welding. If you can do your welding under a hood, or which sucks the welding fumes out, or if you can have some type of fan which blows it, let's say, out or to the side away from you, that's an example of engineering control, which is isolating that hazard from you. And then the next most effective is administrative controls, and this is changing the way people work, and this can be education, to letting people know how hazardous a material might be. It could be the use of signage, which might keep certain people outside of the work zone where the hazard is at. And it could also mean the rotating in and out of people, so that instead of having perhaps one person who's exposed to a hazard 8 hours a day, you might rotate a couple of people or 4 people in and out of that, so that each person is exposed only, let's say, 4 hours or 2 hours a day, and that can cut in half or cut by 75% the exposure that the person has to the hazard. And then beyond that, once you've exhausted elimination, substitution, engineering, and administrative controls, only then do we consider PPE. And we often do have to rely on PPE, and that's fine if we have to rely on it. And respirators fall in that category, and this is protecting the worker, from the hazard, whether it be airborne contaminants with respirators, whether it be noise with hearing protective devices, or whatever PPE, gloves, or whatever that's needed. Just wanted to point out the hierarchy of controls, and that the use of respirator is something that's used when it is necessary, but only after exhausting those other controls. And respirator protection is a weak spot in general throughout the country. And as you see here, it's the second most cited violation amongst OSHA inspectors. So we've got a lot of room for improvement with the wearing of our respirators, and that's in the mainland, that's here in the Virgin Islands as well. Not every respirator is the same. Different types of respirators will have a different level of protection, and they use what's called the assigned protection factor, or APF, to tell exactly how much protection you're going to get with different types of respirators. And so, like I'd call it the standard, the half-face respirator. That's what most people use for those who are certified pesticide applicators anyway. And most people who use respirators in the work, those are going to have an APF of 10. And that simply means that it's going to reduce those contaminants so that it's going to be 1/10 inside that microclimate inside the respirator than it is outside, where the hazardous material is just airborne and just circulating freely. And APF, it comes from OSHA, and they've got a definition for it. And so it's the workplace level of respiratory protection that a respirator or class of respirators is expected to provide to employees when the employer implements a continuing effective respiratory protection program, as specified. Their specific regulation is given there. And this slide just shows the various levels of protection with different types of masks. So starting on the left, you've got an APF of 10 with the respirators that most of us wear. And this is the half-face respirators, whether it's a simple filtering face piece, the ones with the straps that go all the way around the head. We're not including those that go just wrap around the ear in the United States. they don't recognize those as respirators for the type of work we do. But whether a simple one like that or the elastomeric respirators, which get used over and over, half face and full face. Now the full face can also have an APF of 50. As you see in the middle, the third of those 5 columns, the full face piece respirator can have an APF of 50, which is even 5 times more protective than the typical half-face respirator, but only if it's been confirmed with a quantitative fit test. Otherwise, if just using a qualitative fit test or no fit test at all, and someone just purchases this and uses it, then you're going to have to assume it's got the lower APF rating of 10, which is still not bad. And in most environments, reducing that concentration of hazards in the air by 10 is pretty good. But just to let you know, if you can cut it by 50, much better. Even cutting it by 25, I mean 2.5 times more protective than the standard respirator is the positive air pressure respirator, as you see in that second column from the left there. These are great items here, and I think this is where the industry will be going into the future. They just got to get the price of these down by a lot. And then going towards the right here, you've got an APF of 1,000. This is 100 times more effective than a standard respirator. That's pretty good. And 1,000 times more protective is your self-contained breathing apparatus. This is what you'd be wearing in a Class A hazmat suit, or it's what you'd use when scuba diving. This is supplying air to a person rather than filtering out the existing air. And your respirator, the type of respirator that you're going to use can vary based on so many different factors, but the cartridges used as well can vary. Now, if you're using just a simple filtering face mask, these are designed to filter out particulates, basically dry, very small diameter materials like dust, and but also mists and fumes, fibers like you might find with installing of insulation, and beyond that, like the elastomeric respirators, they have these particulate type filters that are placed on it to also keep out those dry small particles. Now, if you're using pesticides, that particular filter can work for certain pesticides, but for by far most of them, you're going to need the gaseous cartridge on your respirator. And this is where the elastomeric respirators come in more handy again, because you've got the option of the particulate filter or the gas filter that you can place on it. And the gas filters usually work for particulates as well. And this is what you use for gases or vapors, which is what you're encountering mostly with pesticide applications. And then if you're in an oxygen deficient environment, if that oxygen level gets below 19.5%, that's considered immediately dangerous to life and health, and you cannot merely filter out the contaminants in the air. You have to actually bring oxygen in, and in this case you'd be wearing a tank of oxygen, whether that be for routine work like with the SCBA, or with a small tank for something for an escape type situation, like maybe getting out of a tunnel during an emergency, for example. So going back to the filtering respirators, the face piece respirator, these things, they need to fit tight, they need to form a good seal across the face, and they're going to be filtering out particles. The good thing about these is they're fairly cheap, and they're also easier to find. You're going to be able to find this in many stores in the Virgin Islands. You don't necessarily need to purchase these online and wait, a week for them to arrive. They're lightweight, they're easy to store, they can usually stack upon each other. They're disposable. Because they're so cheap, many people wear them once and throw them away. If you do keep them, it's easy to fold up. You can put them in your pocket, you can put them in the dash box. It's a lot easier to use. It's just important to know that for a respirator, for something to wear for work, it's got to be the type with at least 2 straps that go across the head, like the back of the bottom of the head and the neck, and towards the top of the head to get a tight seal there. You cannot wear the ones that just go around the ears. Now, people are wearing those oftentimes to protect against coronavirus and whatever happens to be the prevalent disease that's going around, and that's fine for general use. But for wearing in the workplace, protect against airborne contaminants that are produced from your work, you need to be wearing the regular respirator shown here with both straps across that go across the back. And with those filtering face piece respirators, there's an option to have the valve that's on the front. Now, not all of them do. If it doesn't have a valve, you're simply blowing it in and out through the fabric of that respirator, and that's been shown to be effective. It's usually an N95, which is shown to be effective for filtering out 95%. It's 95% efficiency, and then reducing by a factor of 10 again for that APF rating of 10. However, if you have a valve in it, that has been placed there so it's easier on the exhale. While breathing in, of course, you've got to be moving oxygen in through that filtering face piece in order for it to work. But on the exhale, it allows the exhale through that valve, and it's a little easier on the breathing. And this is something you're wearing 4 to 8 hours a day. Generally, people think of the valved face piece respirators as being easy to breathe through, and I will vouch for that myself. The problem is during coronavirus, people started wearing these in some places, and like the airlines and certain workplaces, they actually prohibited them because although it would protect a wearer against coronavirus particles from receiving it from someone else, it does allow the person to shed that virus and to breathe them out freely through the face mask. And of course, the face mask during a pandemic, you want to protect both yourself and others around you, and they were banned for that reason. However, in the workplace and without a pandemic situation, they are allowed to be used and can be preferable and are a little bit easier to breathe through. And then going to elastomeric respirators. These are the reusable respirators. It's kind of a plasticky, rubbery material, a little bit higher in cost, but there is better options of contaminants that it can protect from. So, it works with particles, or it can also work with gas and vapors. And most cartridges, they've got the option to cover both. Just make sure when you purchase the cartridges for it that it does cover both. Just don't assume that. But, again, these things are reusable. They cover the nose and the mouth. If it's just a half-face respirator, it can cover the entire face, which can be ideal. If you're using pesticides and applying up above your head, and this is material that's falling down into your face, I know from experience that can be a problem. You're going to have to wear a face shield anyway, so you might as well just wear a full face mask to cover that. It gives you that face protection and even eye protection as well. Problem with that is some people complain of it as being hot and maybe fogging up, trapping humidity inside because of the heat. So there's trade-offs with it. But with these, because this is one item that's got to fit a large number of different types of people. So most manufacturers will offer 3 or 4 different sizes of the elastomeric respirator in order for it to get a good tight seal against the face on a large diversity of people. Also, because they're a little more expensive and these are built to be used over and over again, most of them have got spare parts that can be bought. Instead of having to replace them all the time, you can just replace some parts and get double or triple your use out of them. But again, because they are being reused over and over again, it is important that you do clean, and disinfect them so that they can be reused, but also be sanitary and be working effectively. And now to get into PAPRs, this is the Powered Air Purifying Respirator. I worked at the railroad just prior to coming on board here at UVI again, and we tested these for work on our railroad, and our workers loved them. I loved them. I promoted this throughout our railroad. The problem with these things are they were $1,200 a piece for us, and we were buying them wholesale. So know that these things are very expensive, and they also require a good deal of maintenance. You got to recharge that battery every day. I think the battery is good for 10 hours per charge, but it's not something you can just, put on and take off as you want and just, throw in the back of the truck. If this is something that gets broken and gets ran over or something like this, it's something to make you very upset because it's $1,000+ down the drain. But anyway, the good thing about these, it's an integrated helmet. So you get like a safety helmet and a face shield, safety glasses, all and a respirator all in one. Typically, it doesn't have to be, but most often it's this helmet that goes over your head and across the front of your face. And then you've got this battery pack which powers a fan and a filter, and it will blow filtered air into the helmet. And you're usually wearing this battery pack and fan on your back side, and it's either by wearing a backpack as a backpack or by a belt. And usually your most contaminated air is going to be in front of you, because typically you're doing a work task which is actually creating the hazardous environment when you're applying a material like a pesticide, or perhaps if you're welding or using paint or something like that. It's generally the heaviest concentration is in front of you where you're working with your hands, but the air that's coming in is from behind you, and it's generally cleaner to start with there, and then it's going through a filter, the same filter, the particulate or gas or combined filter that you would be using with a half face mask, and then it's coming up in through the helmet and it's circulating around your head before it's being blown out of the respirator. Now, it's a benefit for one, because you don't need a tight fit of the respirator up on your face, and with that you don't have to worry about shaving every day. And that's the thing that the main appeal with a lot of workers, including myself. But in addition to that, because it's blowing this air across your head, it's like a fan underneath your safety helmet, and that's another wonderful feature again. Now, we tested these in the summertime in southern Louisiana and the Mojave Desert in California, and the workers loved them in both of those locations. They were tested in the summer. Now in Louisiana, we're looking at up to 100 degrees and about 80% relative humidity when these things were worn, and the workers liked them throughout. Now in the Mojave Desert, we were looking at above 100 degrees. I think it was up to 120, and we're looking at 20, probably like the humidity levels of just 20%. And it's very dry, very hot air. And our workers there liked and preferred the PAPRs up to about 100 degrees. At that point, it was just like blowing hot oven air up into their head, and they switched back to half-face respirators at that point. It was just too hot for them. But that's not really common here in Virgin Islands. We're looking at high humidity and warm temperatures, well under 100 degrees for the most part, at least outdoors, or when you're able to use fans. I understand it can get hotter if you're in certain environments like a house without ventilation, or maybe inside a container that hasn't been aired out. But these things could work very well. There's a lot of applications where they work here in the Virgin Islands. It's just kind of a step up from the full face respirator, I think. Greater protection, APF of 25, very expensive, and it requires better maintenance than what we're using with those other respirators. And then the filters that you use on your respirator, they're going to have a different rating on them. And most often you're going to have an N95 for your filtering face mask, and you might have an N95, maybe an N99 or an N100 for your particulate cartridges that go on an elastomeric respirator. And this is for when you're applying materials without oil. Now, if you're using materials with oil, then you need to use a filter with an R or a P rating, and usually we use the ones with the P100 rating. Now, when they first started these, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago perhaps, it was hard to get 100% and even 100%, it's, you can't filter out 100% of something. It's 99.97%, so it's almost everything. But it was much easier to manufacture the R, an oil-resistant filter, than it was the P, the completely oil-proof. But it's much easier to do now. So typically you're going to find an N95 or N100 for those drier materials, particulates without oil, or you're going to have the P100 for the dry materials with oil and or the gas and vapors. So that covers a bit about the basics of respirators. Now I want to get into fit testing of respirators, and this is a very important topic that's been neglected up to this point, but I think we've got to work around a good solution so that we can start using this with our workers in the Virgin Islands. Now, the fit of your respirator is very important. If your respirator doesn't fit well, and we're talking about the half-face respirators, it's a negative pressure respirator, meaning that when you breathe inwards, it's creating a negative pressure, and as you breathe in, obviously you want that material to come through the face mask if it's a filtering respirator, or those cartridges if it's the filtering type of cartridges. But if you breathe in and you don't have a tight seal, it's likely you're going to bring that contaminated air from outside of your respirator inside the respirator, which is your breathing space, and then you're going to be breathing that material in. We want to prevent that. Now, common sites for this air leakage are around the nose, like where the nose meets the cheek, and also around the beard, the stubble or beard where you might have facial hair. And it can be anywhere upon the face, especially if you don't have those two straps on tightly. But we want to ensure that everyone's got a good fitting respirator with a tight seal. And I know a lot of respirators have been bought off of the internet, without touching or trying things out first, assuming that you are a medium fit or maybe a small or large fit, just based on maybe other items of clothing that you wear. But we can start doing better with this now, with doing fit testing, so that everyone gets a good fit with the respirator. And OSHA has a good process for doing fit testing, and they define fit testing as the use of a protocol to qualitatively or quantitatively evaluate the fit of a respirator on an individual. And again, on why to fit test, everywhere is different. Everyone's face is shaped a little bit differently. We're all different sizes. Our faces are just shaped differently. You got different shapes of jaw bones. Also, it's ideally you can have a choice of different types of respirators to wear, not just in size from one respirator, but maybe several different manufacturers. Because when you have a respirator that is comfortable and fits right, you're more likely to wear it and comply with the regulations for wearing it when you truly need to. And with respirator fit testing, there's often training as well on how to use it correctly. And this also gives one confidence in their performance. So instead of worrying if they're going to get sick or they're going to get toxic insult from the job they're doing, they can be assured that they're going to be safe and they can focus on their job. It also helps them comply with regulations. As I stated earlier, it's the second most cited violation with OSHA. Safety in Paradise does not give fines when we do our site visits. However, there is an enforcement arm of OSHA, and if they do give you an inspection and they find you using respirators improperly, they will issue fines and citations for that. We want to keep you from doing that up front. And then just maximizing protection. Why have a respirator and why use it if it's not going to work effectively for you? We want it to work effectively for you. And one doesn't need to take a formal course or have any type of certification to do fit testing. It can be anyone with appropriate knowledge and experience. It's just important that the person doing the fit testing knows what they're doing. Ideally, it'll be the same person so you can be consistent with this fit testing process. And each person that's going to be doing the fit testing, they need to be able to calibrate the equipment they're using, to perform these tests properly, recognize invalid tests, and ensure that the test equipment is in proper working order. Now, with a qualitative test, they need to prepare these test solutions properly as well. And we'll get into that here in a little bit. In quantitative tests, they've got to be able to calculate the fit factors properly so that you get a good rating of that fit test. So when people, typically they're getting a respirator and are told they need to use this at work. So, they purchase the respirator and they try it out and like, yeah, this works and I'm good to go. And I know that's kind of the way things have been done, but there's a better way to do it. And there's actually an OSHA protocol which is mandated, and you can be fined heavily if you don't do it right. And it's mandated because you do really need to ensure that someone is physically able to wear a respirator and that it fits them properly. And what a large company will do, this is what LimeTree and many other large companies will do, is when someone is hired, before they ever start their job with tasks that require the respirator, is they get medically evaluated for it first. And then after they have that a positive on that evaluation, then they get tested for proper fit for the respirator that they are to use. And then they can use the respirator for the first time at their job. And then this happens on an annual basis for them. Now, I know oftentimes, small businesses, they're limited in the resources they have. You're dealing with maybe high employee turnover, and it's hard to do this medical evaluation, the fit test first. Now, Safety in Paradise has received funding from OSHA to purchase the fit testing equipment so that we can provide those fit tests for you. Now, that gets us a lot better. That doesn't get us all the way. So the medical evaluation, that's still the tough point. But there is a questionnaire, a medical questionnaire one can complete, and then that can be confirmed or validated by your medical doctor. Whether you want to go in with an occupational doctor, such as at Pinnacle Services, or maybe somewhere on the mainland or Puerto Rico, or you may be able to even go to your regular doctor, let's say with an annual physical or checkup. You can present that medical questionnaire to them and they can confirm and validate that. That will cover that part too. And then, you're at the tip of the spear then. You're doing the right thing to the best of what's available for your workers wearing the respirator. And not all respirators require fit testing. When I say that, most of the respirators require fit testing, and perhaps all of the respirators that you're using at your workplace require fit testing. But the ones that are negative pressure, that require a tight seal around the face, yes, they do require fit testing, and that would be the filtering face pieces and the half face and full face elastomeric respirators. The PAPRs, that's positive pressure respirators. You don't need a tight seal across the face for those, so those don't need annual fit testing. They do still need the medical evaluation before you can use it for the first time, but they don't require that annually, and they don't require the fit testing at all, which is another advantage of their use. And fit testing is it's a process. There's a bit to it, and workers need to know what's to be done with the fit test and give them some time to prepare for it as well. So it's good to send out a notice, at least several days prior to doing the fit test for them, and allows them to prepare for it. Primarily allows for males to shave, because you do need that, a tight seal. You don't necessarily need to shave the entire beard. If someone really enjoys their beard, they can have a trim mustache or goatee or soul patch. You can't have the mutton chops or the really bushy beards like a mountain man and wear the respirator. You're not going to pass the fit test, and no fit tester is going to even allow that fit test to start. So shaving does need to be done. This chart happens to show different types of beard styles that can work with a respirator fit test. You basically just need to have no hair on that area at which that respirator seals up against the face. And some people, they don't like fit testing. It takes time from the work, requires men to shave, and a lot of men like to keep their beards and they don't like to shave. I'm one of those, so I hear you there if you're one of those people. But I just want you to know that fit testing today is better than it has been in certain times. And I want to show you this YouTube video to just give you an idea of what people had to put up in the 1930s. We're talking about 80 to 90 years ago.
To make sure it would fit various kinds and sizes of faces, it had to form a dust-tight seal on all types. The long and narrow, the medium, the round and full. To test security of fit, coal dust was blown into the air. They breathe deeply, trying to suck in all the dust they can. When the respirators are removed, the sharp white line must show not a sign of leakage around the facepiece. His face is dirty, but his lungs are clean.
So, you know, we're not as bad as that. Now that guy, you can tell the respirator fit tightly on him. Good job there. And that was for particle type. That was, I assume that was prior to having the gas vapor type cartridges that we have today. And he's ready to go to work now, right? Now that he knows that his respirator is working properly. But just to let you know, fit testing done by me and what is required by OSHA will not be that process. It'll be a much cleaner process, but just know that it could be worse, and it was much worse 80 or 90 years ago. So the fit testing, it can be qualitative or it can be quantitative. And starting out with the qualitative, this is a simpler, it's a cheaper process. It's basically taking a foul-smelling substance, and the fit tester will make up a solution of this Bitrix, saccharin, banana oil, or an irritant smoke. And sometimes they'll also place the person within this type of tent around their head, as you see in the first two photos, or maybe inside this plastic, you know, kind of enclosure, like a plastic closet in that third one there. And this is to kind of prevent this foul-smelling substance from, you know, penetrating the entire room and impacting everyone, just impacting the individual. It's basically you know, you emit this foul-smelling compound. If the person can smell it through the respirator, then they don't have a good fit test of the respirator. And if you, you know, if they cannot smell it, then you can say, okay, yeah, you've got a good respirator. Now, this isn't highly accurate, but it, you know, it's a good binary process. Your respirator either works or it doesn't, and it gives you a good indicator. And it used to be all we had. Other than the you know, spraying coal smoke all over your face. Other than that, this was the only method that we had, you know, many years ago to determine if you had a tight seal there with your respirator. In contrast, with quantitative fit testing, there's two different instruments which are authorized by OSHA to do these types of tests. One of them is the QuantiFit, which I used in my prior job with the railroad. And we're going to be using here with Safety in Paradise the port account machine by TSI. Now personally, I think the TSI is a much better machine. I actually had a part in recommending and lobbying for this machine for our fit testing. But with either of these machines, it gives you a numerical value of how well the fit is with your respirator, rather than, yeah, it works or it doesn't because I can't smell this foul-smelling banana oil. It can be, you know, based on the solution you have within that's not foul smelling. It'll tell you exactly how much. I believe it's between 0 and 100. The disadvantage of this method is it requires expensive machinery, around $15,000 up front, and then with an annual calibration by the manufacturer, which is an additional several $100s every year, plus another several $100s for the shipping to go back and forth to that place. And then this slide, again, it just kind of compares and contrasts the two methods, you know, with the quantitative and the qualitative methods. Just to reiterate, Safety in Paradise is going to be conducting the quantitative fit testing. And even though this is more expensive, it's more accurate. It allows you to wear that full face piece respirator with that 50 APF rating, provided that you can verify, confirm that it's got a tight fit test. And we're using this because the quality of that fit testing process is much better and much more accurate with the quantitative method. And because OSHA provided the funding for us to get this, we're able to do that. And then our final section for today is to look at respirator use, care, and maintenance. It's important that you inspect your respirator each time before you wear it, as well as periodically with a more thorough inspection. Now, each time you wear it, look at that facepiece for cracks, tears, and dirt on it. Look at the inhalation valves and make sure they're not distorted, that the valves themselves are not cracked or tearing. Also make sure that you've got a good connection there between your cartridge and the inhale valves as well. Check that your head straps are functional, that they're intact and they have good elasticity, that they can in fact hold that respirator tight up against your face in at least 2 different locations and towards the back of your head. And examine all the plastic parts and gasket areas for signs of cracking or fatigue and replace them if necessary. One thing that I like to do before using a respirator myself is I put it on and I put my hands over those either the intake valves or where the cartridges are. Put my hands over that and breathe in really hard and see how good of a seal I have there. And I should have a very tight seal where it's very hard to breathe. If it's impossible to breathe in from that, I know I've got a really good tight seal. And then after that, I'll take my hands off, go ahead and take that full in-breath, and then I'll put my hand over the exhale valve and breathe out. And with breathing out, it should be very hard to breathe out as well, showing that you've got a strong and functional exhaust valve. Even more important is probably that exhaust valve, because that thing can easily get warped or crack and be ineffective. And it could be that you're actually allowing air to go in and out through that exhaust valve, rendering your respirator almost useless. You definitely don't want to put yourself in that type of situation or environment. And then maybe not with a daily inspection, but a more thorough inspection, maybe you want to do less often, maybe monthly or quarterly, is opening up that exhaust valve cover and actually examine that valve itself. Now this is a little simple plastic or kind of rubbery piece in there, and as you can see from this photo here, this is something that's very easily get warped or cracked when, if you're storing this on your dashboard, it's getting 150 degrees in the day, it's getting down to 60 degrees at night. This thing could be rendered ineffective, and we don't want to put you in a bad situation with your respirator there. And then almost as important as using and inspecting with your respirator is the cleaning and disinfecting of it, so that you can use it over and over again without exposing yourself to other hazards which might be growing inside of your respirator. Now, you just think of this statement that I'm about to say. I would rather wear your dirty underwear than wear your dirty respirator. I'm saying that truthfully. I'd rather not wear either, but if I had to choose between one of the two, I wear your dirty underwear before I wear your dirty respirator. Because when you're wearing this respirator, let's say this is something you've got to share with someone else, you are breathing into that less than an inch away from your mouth and nose. You're breathing out a lot of moisture naturally through your breath. You're breathing out spittle, mucus, all types of microbes, perhaps virus particles if you're sick and maybe don't know it. That's going on the inner surface of that respirator, and if you simply hand it to someone else, they're getting exposed to all of that. And then they're supposed to put this thing on and have that about a ½ inch away from their nose and mouth and do their job and hope that they don't get anything from all of that debris, let's call it, inside of that respirator. Now, it doesn't have to be that way. You can clean and disinfect a respirator so that another person can use it. And I do not have a problem wearing someone else's clean respirator. But dirty respirator, no, not at all. And the cleaning of a respirator, it's a very simple process. It's not much different than cleaning the dishes or cleaning the other tools that you might use. You may want to remove the canisters you're using, because they've usually got some type of paper or cardboard filter inside of them. But it's basically just, dunking them in warm soapy water, maybe having to scrub, brush off the dirt and things like that. Don't worry if your respirator is dirty. The only person with a clean respirator is the one who doesn't use it, because they're not working or they're not doing their job right, because they're not wearing a respirator when they should. But periodically you can clean your respirator, clean it well with soapy water, rinse it well, and dry it off. Make sure you get all of the water out of all those little nooks and crannies, or else if water gets trapped in there, that's just an opportunity for mold and fungi to develop, creating another toxic environment inside your respirator. You might want to use a disinfecting wipes, to give you a bit of extra disinfection there. And it might be that you need to replace some parts here and there, such as the straps. They're like elastic or cloth based, and they get sweaty over time. They may get smelly, get a lot of salts and sweat in it. It might be that you've got to replace some parts here and there. But you can double or triple your use of your respirator quite often by taking care of it very well. And then the last part of taking care of your respirator is storing it. I know a lot of people store their respirators inside of their work vehicles, and I just want you to know there's a lot of difference in the various microclimates within a vehicle. If you store your respirator in a cloth or a paper bag sealed underneath the seat, it's not going to get as hot under there, and it's not going to get as dirty there as it would on top of the dash, where the sun is going to hit it and it's going to be well north of 120 degrees, let's say every day, and getting all of that UV light to help break it down. Or in the back of the pickup bed, just lying there, exposed to the elements. So if you can store your respirator, if in the vehicle, within a tool compartment, a toolbox, or under the seat, inside of a bag, it's going to last a lot longer that way than if you have it just out and exposed to the elements. Even better is if you can store it inside your workshop, maybe in a plastic bag like here. That's probably the best case scenario there, at least on the weekends and holidays, if not on a daily basis. Of course, you do want to have it with you when you're at the work site. So, just know that the cleaning and storing of it will help your respirator last longer, because an elastomeric respirator or a PAPR is not something that's supposed to be used as a disposable respirator. It's something that's supposed to be taken care of and used multiple times. As long as it's the cartridges that need to be replaced often, not the respirator body itself. And so that concludes my presentation here. This is just some supplemental training on respirators. And I'll end it with another shameless plug for the Safe and Sound campaign by OSHA. And once again, I want to ask if you can participate in this program. If your work group sat around and listened to me for the last 50 minutes talking about respirators here, you qualified for the Safe and Sound event. You participated in the Safe and Sound campaign, and I request that you just get on the website as shown here in the lower left-hand corner and just register your attendance with this. And by doing so, the VI there in that lower right-hand corner will go from a blank to a 1 or a 5 or who knows, 20. That would be great. But we've had zero participation in this event that's gone on for more than 10 years, and we would like to get some participation going with this. So I'd really appreciate it if you can help by representing the Virgin Islands by noting your participation by registering in this event. And then my last shameless plug for the Safety in Paradise program. I want you to know as well, we plan to be doing respirator fit testing throughout the Virgin Islands when I get my TSI port account in hand. It has been gone through the procurement process. We're working with OSHA for this because they're paying for it, so it is taking some time. Just please be patient with us for that, but also know that there is a string attached with this. We are going to require a safety visit in order to get the respirator fit testing. and I'm happy to come to your work site. I can do training. I can do a presentation like this or something similar, longer or shorter, to tell your workers how to use a respirator, do the fit testing. They're on site as well, and even help set you up with a respirator program, which is a written plan and is another requirement by OSHA within your respirator program. And just to let you know that it does require a safety visit as well. And if you do request that from us, I want you to know that we are not the enforcement arm of OSHA. All we can do is training, consultation, and education. And we cannot give out any fines. We don't want to give out any fines anyway. But just to let you know, we don't do that. We only give you advice. If you're doing something egregious and is life-threatening and you refuse to remedy that, we will turn you into OSHA, but so will many others on that one. But I know at least the vast majority of you are doing good work. You want to be safe. Just know that you can contact OSHA, and just go to our website here. It's on the lower left-hand corner, and you can register. You can request a free consultation, which is one of those green icons there, to set up the process, and we'll get started with that, and also set up for the respirator fit testing for you. And or you could contact us at with our contact information here. Myself, Joe Williamson, and my colleague Patricia Williams Anderson, we both work in the St. Croix cell office, which is in Frederiksted, and we also have a facility in St. Thomas, and we cover the entire Virgin Islands, so we can come to your site to do those site visits and the respirator fit testing for you. So feel free to contact us directly if you want, or you can go from our website if you want to just automatically fill out that form there to get this process started. And just as well, feel free to contact me if you got any comments or you have any questions about this presentation as well. I'm used to doing face-to-face presentations and people ask questions as we go. This one's a little different. But anyway, I thank you for your time. I want to thank you for working to promote safety, make safety a priority in your business. And if you choose to participate, and I hope you do, I want to thank you for participating in the Safe and Sound campaign. Thank you, everyone. Good day.